G'day, my name is Patrick and I'm here in Figueres in the northeast of Spain, where almost 120 years ago to the day a famous artist was born, who once famously quoted, "I wake each day with the supreme pleasure of being Salvador Dali." Quick breakfast before I head into the Dali Museum. So café con leche and what is essentially a pan au chocolat, but here they're calling a pastel de chocolate. They call the Dali Museum and Theatre in Figueres the Gala-Dali Castle in Pubol and the House Museum in Portugal, the Dali Triangle. And if you plan to visit any of these sites in Figueres and surrounds, jump online and book tickets in advance because they sell out. I'm sure I've read somewhere about surrealism that if you think you get it, you don't get it, which is probably good because I don't know what's going on here. This is the opening courtyard of the Dali Museum here in Figueres, and there's this black Cadillac. It looks like it's straight out of a mobster scene from the 1930s, and there's some very emotive operatic music playing within it. There's even a scene of rain falling down within the car, and there's naked mannequins inside, and one of the windows looks like it's been shot out. Just saw a child throwing a tantrum because they weren't able to pat this companion dog for someone with vision impairment, and it's hard to know if that's real life or it's all part of the exhibition here. Such is the absurdity. So I've just bought a ticket online for this, so I'm not doing this as part of a guided trip. I don't have an audio guide either, and I honestly have no idea where I'm going, and I wonder if that's intentional to create this disorientated, chaotic atmosphere. Maybe I just missed the signs. I've come to visit as a curious person and traveller, not necessarily a fan and certainly no art aficionado. But boom, Dali allows no passivity, and I felt physically wrenched into this paranoid dream sequence of styles and icons. Surrealism, Dadaism, Cubism, modernism, realistic portraits. His wife, Gala, features throughout, as do images of fertility and Christ. Trying to find a postcard that won't terrify little Myrtle. Eggs and bread. I don't even know how I really got to the exit there. I just seem to be wrung out or squeezed out, or I think Dali would say shit out, to be honest. It certainly had something to do with the crush, the amount of people inside, the amount of accents. It felt like a hall of mirrors. It felt like a carnival ride that I immediately knew once I was inside that I wanted to get out of, but it was fascinating at the same time. But it's also the content. At times it's grotesque, It's always challenging. It's very absurd. It requires some thinking, but then you don't want to overthink it because he's probably playing with you. I'm sure a lot of it is satire, it's parody, he's poking fun. But it was that maniacal atmosphere. I had the feeling, I had the essence of cackling clowns. Oh goodness, have a look at this. As I've been saying this, I'm just sitting, I've just wandered across this guy here. How appropriate, and that's how I felt. I felt like there was images like that around every corner, even if there wasn't. Been thinking, it felt a bit like an adult, sinister, uncomfortable version of Alice in Wonderland. Falling into this dream sequence, feeling disorientated, not quite understanding things, having that relatability of dreams where, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, or I've had something like that happen to me before, or it feels really real, but then it feels absurd and then it feels dangerous. So maybe you haven't come across Dali before, and the Mae West lips, the melting clocks, surrealism, clips of him on the Dick Cavett show, his pet ocelot and pangolin, his penchant for self-promotion, his leanings towards fascism. You've probably at least come across one of his more famous artworks, which is the wrapper for Chupa Chup. In Spanish, the verb for to suck is chupar, and this is a Spanish brand. An anagram of Salvador Dali is a vida dollars, meaning that he was always moving towards, he was always finding a way to find a buck. Either way, he was very savvy when it came to commercial pursuits, and he was paid an exorbitant amount of money for this simple little design. Another way that he creatively made a buck was that Yoko Ono was said to be quite taken by the iconism of his pencil-thin moustache, and so she offered him a huge amount of money for a little clipping of this moustache. So the story goes, he either took a bit of dried up grass or maybe even a bit of horse mane, rolled it up and sent it away to Yoko Ono to make some dollars. On the way back to my apartment, I've seen this Catalyuna Toy Museum, so popping in for a quick look. Kangaroo supporter. Go Roo boys. Okay, I think I've made a bad decision. I was just talking about being in the Dali Museum and being worried about clowns. And there's old-timey doll houses and music everywhere already. Okay, so I did find that a little bit terrifying, and despite my eerie welcome to the place, it was a really comprehensive collection and a curious way to spend half an hour escaping the rain. Well, this part of Spain, Catalonia, has some very unique Christmas traditions. They have cagatillo, which is a log that you feed treats upcoming to Christmas, and then it poops out gifts after the children generally beat the log. But this is another one. These are called the caganes. So these are small little figurines or statue. I think the traditions come from the Middle Ages, and these are placed in the nativity scenes in Catalonia. But nowadays they have parodies of political figures, sporting figures from all different parts of the world. But here in the Toy Museum, they've got some traditional one from the last 100 years or so. So the caganes of Catalonia, literally the little crappers or the little shitters. So my morning in Wonderland continued on for a little while there. I think it's time for some normalcy. Might grab some lunch. It's my second day here in Figueres, and I just made the train. I'm heading to a place called Flassa. So this is part of the Dali Triangle, to the medieval castle that he predominantly dedicated to his muse and wife, Gala. Spain often gets that reputation for mañana mañana, things being a little bit relaxed, running late, the siesta. But in my experience, the train system is excellent and it typically leaves right on time. But today I'm benefiting from it leaving a little bit late, which I'm fine with because it saved me a couple of hours not having to wait around for the next one. Having a quick coffee before I jump in a taxi over to the castle, the museum. So café con leche, coffee with milk. And then this morning I'm having a bocadillo, which is a sandwich with crushed tomato, some cheese, and what they call jamón dulce or jamón York. So not the famous Spanish jamón ibérico that comes from the black pigs. This is a charismatic little cafe. Here at the taxi stand outside the cafe, and I'd waited for a while, and I popped in to where I just had a coffee and I said, "Are there taxis that come on by?" She said, "Yeah." And she walked me to the same place where I'm standing now. I thought I've missed something obvious here. And then she pointed at this small little number. He'll be here in 2 minutes. It's like Uber. It's a quiet, peaceful, tiny little town. I can see off in the distance the Pyrenees Mountains. This castle was intended as a place of refuge for Gala, and upon acceptance she said to him that he was only able to visit with written permission. The whole place is very tranquil, a bit of an antithesis to what I saw yesterday. So Russian-born Gala was 10 years Dali's senior. When they met, she was married to Paul Éluard, a French poet and one of the founders of the Surrealist movement. Gala supposedly had this voracious sexual appetite, whereas Dali was somewhat disgusted by sex. He was confused by sex, at least participating in physical sexual acts. He was more of a voyeur. After yesterday's visit, feeling a bit stormy, a bit triggered by the chaos and the crowds and some of the content of the artwork, I've just decided today to approach it with a bit more levity, a bit more brush it off the shoulder, just with a sense of humour, and I had to laugh at this. So here in the backyard of the castle is a brown or orangey Datsun, and it looks a lot like my first car that, cheers to Uncle Des for helping me out with. So that was a Mazda 929. It was brown, it was a station wagon just like this from 1977, but it wasn't brown for very long because I snapped this back passenger door side off and I had to get it replaced. And the only one that I can get it replaced with was a red door. So here was this brown car with a red door driving around the suburbs of Ferntree Gully. It seems after Gala's death in 1982, Dali fell further and further into a depression, and his health was ailing all of the time. He developed some physical limitations which inhibited his ability to paint and probably funnel the creativity. And he died in 1989. Bit of a tortured figure by the sounds of things. As well as all the wealth and the fanaticism and the great fame and the controversy that went with Dali, there was also loss and tragedy. And he lost Gala in the latter years of his life, but also he lost his mother, and which he said was a heartbreak almost too strong to bear. He had a brother called Salvador Dali, and when he was old enough to understand, he was taken to the gravesite of his older brother, and it entered into the mythos and the legend of Dali. It's almost like he felt this compulsion, this need to live a life bigger than just one person, big enough for himself and his brother. Waiting for my taxi back to Flusser train station, and across the way there's a quote from Dali. It says the only difference between me and a madman is that I know I'm mad. I bought a pencil. Thanks for joining over the last couple of days. I hope you've enjoyed exploring this northeast corner of Spain. There's just one thing left to do, which is to get Myrtle's mail on the way, and we'll see you in the next one.
No.